Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
You ever watch someone walk into a room and just know they're about to do something spectacularly stupid? The Vrika didn't. That was their first mistake. Their second was assuming the human was asking for permission. The arena of Viridia's Prime operated on a simple principle: fear cells. For 600 galactic cycles, the Coalition had broadcast the trials to every corner of civilized space. Two beings entered. One left. The crowd drank the terror like wine. The betting pools churned with credits. The losers became dust. The winners became legends. And legends, the Vrika understood, were obedient. They came when the Coalition called. They performed their violence with appropriate gravitas. They died with dignity when their time came, or they won with grace and retired to estates on temperate worlds where they could spend their fortunes in peaceful obscurity. Legends followed the script. Kalen Thorne had never read the script. The human sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor of the preparation chamber, 30 minutes before his first trial match, and he was drawing. Not battle plans, not strategic diagrams. He was drawing a cartoon of a Vrika war master riding a unicycle while juggling small, terrified creatures that looked suspiciously like the arena's official mascot. The door hissed open. "What?" said Overseer Vex. "Are you doing?" Kalen looked up with a mild confusion of a man who had forgotten anyone else existed. Art. Vex's mandibles clicked in that particular rhythm the Vrika used to express disbelief without wasting the emotional energy on actual surprise. "You are about to enter the most dangerous sporting event in the galaxy, human. Your opponent is a Xylosian Ravager. It has killed 17 beings in this arena. Its neural toxins will liquefy your internal organs within 30 seconds of exposure." "Cool." Kalen added a tiny top hat to the unicycle-riding War Master. "Does it have a name? The Ravager?" "No, the mascot. I'm calling him Gerald." Vex's eye stalks retracted slightly, a gesture that, in Vrika physiology, indicated the early stages of a stress-induced seizure. "You are not taking this seriously." "I'm taking it extremely seriously." Kalen set down his drawing implement, a piece of charcoal he'd somehow smuggled past security, and stood up. He was unremarkable by human standards. Average height, average build, brown hair that hadn't seen a comb in what appeared to be several years. His eyes, however, were not average. They were the color of cheap whiskey in bad light, and they held a calm that Vex found profoundly unsettling. "I'm just not taking it the way you want me to." The Coalition does not care about your emotional state, human. The Coalition cares about ratings. And ratings require drama, fear, suspense. The audience wants to see you suffer. "I can suffer." Kalen stretched his arms over his head, spine cracking in 3 distinct places. "I'm very good at suffering. But I'm not going to perform it for you on command. That's not in my contract." "You don't have a contract." "Exactly." He smiled. It was not a reassuring smile. "I'll be taking my artistic liberties." Vex had overseen 437 trials. He had watched champions weep, beg, rage, and bargain. He had seen every possible permutation of pre-match behavior, from the meditative silence of the Kelzar monks to the frenzied war dances of the Grishnak blood clans. He had never seen a contestant draw cartoons. He was not sure what to do with this information. "The Ravager," Vex said slowly, as if explaining something to a particularly dim offspring, "will not appreciate your artistic sensibilities. It will not be charmed by your humor. It will attempt to kill you in the most painful manner its biology allows." "I'm aware." "Then, why are you not afraid?" Kalen considered the question. He tilted his head. He scratched his jaw, which was rough with 2 days of stubble. He looked, for a moment, genuinely thoughtful. "Because," he said finally, "I've been in this room before. Vex's mandibles went still. Impossible. The preparation chambers are sterilized between each, not this room. Kalen tapped his temple. This room. The room in my head. The place where I've already died 1,000 times, in 1,000 different ways, for 1,000 different reasons. I've been killed by things worse than your Ravager. I've been killed by things that don't have names because the human language hasn't invented words for them yet. I've been killed by silence, by kindness, by the absence of a hand I was reaching for in the dark. He walked toward the chamber door. The arena's roar filtered through the thick stone, a distant, hungry sound. So, when you ask me why I'm not afraid, he said, pausing at the threshold, the answer is, I am. Constantly. Forever. That's just not interesting enough to talk about anymore. He stepped through the door. Vex stood alone in the preparation chamber, surrounded by the fading warmth of the human's presence, and felt something he had not felt in over 200 cycles. Uncertainty. The arena was a masterpiece of architectural cruelty. A circular bowl carved from living rock, its walls rising 300 meters to the sky, its floor a tapestry of shifting environmental hazards. At the moment, the terrain was configured for maximum visual drama. A field of jagged obsidian shards bisected by a river of slow-moving lava, with periodic geysers of superheated steam that erupted without warning. 60,000 beings watched from the stands. 60,000 beings had paid exorbitant sums to witness death. Kalen walked onto the field like a man entering his own backyard. No fledish, no bravado, no acknowledgement of the crowd. He simply walked barefoot on the obsidian, and his feet did not bleed because he had learned, somewhere in his strange human past, how to distribute his weight across sharp surfaces. The Ravager emerged from the opposite gate. It was magnificent. 7 feet at the shoulder. 4 legs, each ending in a cluster of articulated claws that could grip, tear, or inject. A torso covered in chitinous armor plates that rippled with each breath. 2 primary arms ending in scythe-like appendages. And the head was a nightmare of evolutionary efficiency. A cluster of 6 eyes arranged around a central maw, ringed by tentacles that could extend up to 12 feet, and deliver the aforementioned neurotoxins. The crowd roared. The Ravager screamed. A high, keening sound that made the obsidian shards vibrate. Kalen stopped walking. He stood 50 feet from the creature, hands in the pockets of his loose-fitting pants, and he looked at it with the same mild curiosity he had shown Vex. He said. The Ravager did not appreciate being appraised. It charged. The creature's top speed was approximately 40 miles per hour. It covered the distance between them in less than a second. Its scythe arms came down in a double arc designed to bisect the human from shoulder to hip. Kalen moved. Not fast. Not superhuman. He simply wasn't there anymore. He had stepped to the left, not dodging so much as existing elsewhere, and the scythe arms carved empty air. The Ravager overextended, its momentum carrying it past him, and Kalen reached out with one hand and touched its carapace. Lightly, like you might touch a dog you weren't sure was friendly. The Ravager skidded to a halt, turned, and stared at him with all 6 eyes. Sorry, Kalen said. Didn't mean to startle you. The crowd had gone quiet. This was not how trials worked. Contestants were supposed to scream. They were supposed to run. They were supposed to produce the emotional spectacle that justified the price of admission. They were not supposed to apologize to the monster. The Ravager charged again. This time, Kalen didn't move. He stood perfectly still as the creature bore down on him, and at the last possible moment, when the tentacles were already reaching for his face, when the scythe arms were already descending, he said one word. Wait. The Ravager stopped, not because it understood language. It did not. The Xylosian Ravager was a biological weapon, not a conversation partner. It stopped because something in the human's voice, some quality of tone, some frequency of vibration, some fundamental wrongness, triggered an instinct so deep in its neural architecture that it overrode everything else. The creature stood frozen, tentacles twitching, eyes dilated, and it made a sound that had never been recorded from a Ravager before. A whimper. Kalen walked up to it. Slowly, Casually, he reached out and scratched the underside of its jaw, where the chitin was thinnest and the nerve clusters most VG. Good boy, he said. The Ravager's tail began to wag. 60,000 beings watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous creature in the known galaxy melted into the human's touch like a house pet receiving belly rubs. The tentacles curled inward. The scythe arms retracted. The Ravager laid down on the obsidian shards, heedless of the cuts, and rolled onto its back, exposing its vulnerable underbelly. Kalen looked up at the coalition box, where the council members sat in various states of apoplectic shock. So, he called out, voice carrying easily across the silent arena. Do I win? Or does this go to a judge's decision? The aftermath was chaos. Kalen was escorted, politely this time, to a holding chamber that was significantly more comfortable than the preparation cell. There was a bed. There was food. There was a window that looked out over the arena's interior, where maintenance crews were now attempting to extract the Ravager, which had wrapped all four legs around a human maintenance worker and was refusing to let go. The door opened. Vex entered alone. How did you do that? The overseer demanded. Do what? That. Vex gestured vaguely in the direction of the arena. The Ravager. It should have killed you. It wanted to kill you. Instead, it's currently purring. The Xylosian Ravager does not purr. Maybe nobody's ever tried scratching its chin before. Human, Kalen. Human. Vex's eye stalks were fully extended now, a sign of extreme agitation. The Coalition does not appreciate anomalies. Anomalies are bad for business. Bad for business is bad for survival. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Kalen sat on the bed, leaned back against the wall, and regarded the overseer with those unsettling whiskey-colored eyes. You're telling me that you want me to lose. That you want me to perform fear and desperation and eventual heroic defeat, because that's what the audience came to see. The underdog story. The plucky human who tries hard but ultimately falls to superior alien biology. Vex's mandibles clicked. I'm telling you that the Coalition's betting syndicates have calculated their exposure based on certain probabilities. Your behavior has disrupted those calculations. My behavior. Kalen's mouth twitched. You mean my refusal to die on command? I mean your refusal to perform on command. The outcome is irrelevant. The process is the product. And your process is... Vex searched for the word. Wrong. Kalen laughed. It was not a pleasant laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had heard the same argument 1,000 times in 1,000 different contexts and had long since exhausted his supply of patience. Let me tell you something about humans, Overseer. Something the Coalition's intelligence reports probably missed. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice dropping to something almost intimate. We don't perform for you. We don't perform for anyone. Every human you've ever seen, every soldier, every diplomat, every desperate soul who ended up in this arena, they weren't giving you a show. They were giving you a suggestion, a polite request that you reconsider your assumptions about what we are and what we're capable of. And what? Vex asked slowly. Are you capable of? Kalen smiled. It was the smile of a man who had been asked that question before by beings much more powerful than Vex, and had watched their confidence crumble when they received the answer. We're capable of anything, he said. The only question is how much it costs us. And here's the thing about humans, Overseer. The thing you really don't understand. He stood up, walked to the window, and pressed his palm against the glass. Below, the Ravager had finally been coaxed into a transport cage, and it was making mournful sounds that echoed up through the stone. We're very good at paying costs. We've had a lot of practice. Vex stared at the human's back, at the tension in his shoulders, at the way his hand pressed against the glass. Not pushing, not pulling, just contacting, as if he needed to feel something solid beneath his palm. What happened to you? The Overseer asked. Before you came here. What made you like this? Kalen was quiet for a long moment. My daughter, he said finally, died of a treatable disease when she was 7 years old. Treatable, Overseer. There was a cure. We just couldn't afford it. Not because we were poor. We weren't. We were solidly middle class by human standards. But the cure cost more than we could pay, and the insurance wouldn't cover it because it was experimental, and by the time we'd fought through all the appeals and the bureaucratic hell and the endless fucking paperwork, she was gone. He turned around. His eyes were dry. His voice was steady. This was not fresh grief. This was grief that had been worn smooth by time and repetition like a stone in a river. That's what made me like this, he said. Not war. Not trauma. Not some heroic backstory involving galactic conflict and noble sacrifice. My daughter died because the system we built was more interested in profit than in keeping her alive. And I realized in the weeks after, when I couldn't sleep, when I couldn't eat, when I couldn't do anything except sit in her room and smell her pillow, that the universe doesn't care. The universe is cold and indifferent and absolutely fucking delighted to watch you suffer. He walked back to the bed and sat down. So I stopped caring back. I stopped playing the game. I stopped pretending that any of this matters. The arena, the coalition, the ratings, the betting syndicates. None of it matters. The only thing that matters is what I do. Right now. In this moment. Because that's the only thing I can control. He looked up at Vex. Your Ravager tried to kill me. I didn't want to kill it. So I didn't. That's not a strategy. That's not a performance. That's just me, in this moment, choosing not to be the person who kills something that doesn't need to die. Vex stood in the doorway, mandibles working silently. You're insane, the overseer said finally. Probably. Kalen lay back on the bed, folded his arms behind his head, and closed his eyes. But I'm also still alive. And your Ravager is still alive. And somewhere out there, 60,000 beings just watch something they've never seen before, and they're going to talk about it. And more people are going to want to watch the next match, and your precious ratings are going to go up. He opened one eye. So maybe insane is exactly what your business model needs. The second match was scheduled for the following cycle. Kalen spent the intervening time doing absolutely nothing of strategic value. He slept. He ate the surprisingly palatable food that appeared in his chamber at regular intervals. He drew more cartoons. This time, a series depicting the Coalition Council members as various small, anxious animals. He did not train. He did not study his upcoming opponent. He did not review arena schematics or analyze environmental hazards or engage in any of the preparatory behaviors that the Coalition's behavioral analysts had identified as standard for high-performing contestants. This drove the analysts insane. By the 15th hour of the human's captivity, the Coalition had stopped calling it detention after legal review suggested that Kalen had not, in fact, violated any rules. A team of 12 Rika psychologists had assembled to observe him through the chamber's hidden cameras. They watched him sleep. They watched him eat. They watched him draw a particularly unflattering caricature of council member Thrash as a startled hamster. He's not doing anything, said lead analyst Crix, her voice tight with frustration. Perhaps that is the strategy offered junior analyst Vel, a psychological warfare approach. He wants us to believe he has no strategy, thereby making us question our own assumptions. Or, said senior analyst Mock, he genuinely doesn't have a strategy. He's just like this. The other analysts turned to look at him. That's not possible, Crix said. All sentient beings have strategies. Strategy is the foundation of competitive behavior. Without strategy, there's only chaos. Mock gestured at the monitor, where Kalen had just finished drawing a hamster Thrash being chased by an even smaller hamster wearing a crown. Explain that, then. The analysts watched in frustrated silence as the human set down his drawing implement, stretched, and began doing something that appeared to involve bending his body into increasingly improbable shapes. What is he doing now? Vel asked. I believe, said Mock slowly, that he's stretching. Stretching for what? His next match is in 9 hours. Perhaps he's stretching for the match. That makes no sense. Stretching does not confer combat advantage against a Xylosian Ravager. Did you see the first match? The room went quiet. Crix's mandibles clicked in irritation. The first match was an anomaly. The Ravager malfunctioned. Ravagers don't malfunction. They're biological organisms. They can't malfunction any more than you can malfunction. Then, The human did something to it. Some kind of chemical interference. Or pheromonal manipulation. Did the scans show anything? The analysts exchanged uncomfortable glances. No, Crix admitted. The scans showed nothing. No chemical signatures. No pheromonal emissions. No electromagnetic anomalies. The human simply approached the Ravager, spoke to it, touched it, and the Ravager stopped fighting. Which suggests, Mock said carefully, that the human's capabilities extend beyond what our sensors can detect. Or, Crix countered, it suggests that the Ravager was compromised before the match. Perhaps by the previous contestant. Perhaps by the transport crew. There are any number of... The door to the observation room opened. Vex entered, looking significantly more agitated than he had during his previous visit to Kalen's chamber. The coalition has made a decision, the overseer announced. The human second opponent will not be a Ravager. The analysts perked up. What then? Crix asked. Vex's eye stalks retracted. The human second opponent will be a Vrika War Master. The room went absolutely still. You can't be serious, Mock said. Vrika War Masters haven't competed in the trials for over a century. The coalition banned their participation after the coalition, Vex interrupted, has unbanned their participation. Effective immediately. For this match only. That's insane. War Masters are executioners, not combatants. They don't fight. They terminate. Putting a War Master in the arena with a human is like, Mock searched for an appropriate comparison. Like putting a planet cracker in a demolition derby. Those are the terms. Vex's voice was flat. The human will face War Master's Rex. The match will proceed in 3 hours. 3 hours? That's not enough time for... It's enough time for the human to die. Vex turned to leave. That's the point. The door closed behind him. The analyst sat in silence, watching the monitor where Kalen had finished his stretching and was now lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling with an expression of profound boredom. He has no idea what's coming, Crix whispered. Does it matter? Mock asked. They watched the human blink slowly, yawn, roll over onto his side, and close his eyes. No, it didn't matter. Nothing mattered now except the countdown. War Master's Rex had killed 347 beings. This was not an exaggeration. This was not a boast. This was a documented fact, verified by coalition records, corroborated by witness testimony, and celebrated in 17 different commemorative holos that were still broadcast during particularly violent programming blocks. Rex did not enjoy killing. This was what made him so effective. The Vrika War Master understood killing as a craft, a discipline requiring patience, precision, and absolute emotional detachment. He did not hate his targets. He did not fear them. He did not even particularly notice them as individuals. There were problems. He solved problems. The solution was always the same. He entered the arena with the measured steps of a being who had walked this path many times before. His chitin was polished to a mirror sheen. His primary weapon arms were sheathed in ceremonial covers that would be removed at the match's Jung Shru Kai Shru. His secondary arms, smaller, more delicate, designed for precision work, hung relaxed at his sides. The crowd did not roar. The crowd was silent. 60,000 beings watched the War Master take his position at the center of the arena floor. The terrain had been reconfigured for this match, stripped of all environmental hazards, reduced to a simple flat surface of packed earth. No obstacles, no cover, no distractions, just the War Master. And, eventually the human. Kalen emerged from his gate with the same casual stride he had used in the first match. Barefoot, loose clothing, hair uncombed. He looked like he had just woken from a nap, which in fact he had. He walked to the center of the arena, stopped 10 feet from the War Master, and looked up. Rex was tall, 8 feet of armored predator, all sharp angles and gleaming surfaces. His 4 eyes regarded the human with cold disinterest. You are the one who befriended the Ravager, Rex said. His voice was a low rumble, modulated by translator implants embedded in his vocal cords. Befriended is a strong word, Kalen said. We're more like acquaintances. The Ravager is a weapon. Weapons do not have acquaintances. Everything has acquaintances. Even weapons. Kalen smiled. Especially weapons. You should see the acquaintances I've made over the years. Zrex's primary arms twitched. You are not afraid of me. No. Why? Kalen considered the question. Behind him, in the coalition box, the council members leaned forward. In the observation room, the analysts held their breath. In the stands, 60,000 beings waited. Because, Kalen said finally, you're not the first war master I've faced. Zrex's eyes narrowed. Impossible. The Vrika have not participated in the trials, for I'm not talking about the trials. Kalen's voice dropped. I'm talking about the war. The one your people don't talk about. The one that happened in the Sorrow sector 30 cycles ago, when the coalition sent your war masters to pacify a human colony that had the audacity to survive longer than expected. The war master went very still. You were there, Kalen said. It wasn't a question. I can see in your stance. The way you hold your secondary arms. The way you're not looking at me. You're looking through me at something behind my left shoulder. That's a habit you picked up on Kaler's world. You were scanning for snipers. Zrex's mandibles worked silently. The colony wasn't supposed to be armed, Kalen continued. The coalition's intelligence said the humans had surrendered their weapons as part of the surrender terms. But someone forgot to tell the civilians. And when your war masters came through the perimeter, they found themselves facing not soldiers, not trained combatants, but people, parents, grandparents, children who had never held a weapon before that day. He stepped closer. Children, he repeated, who picked up their parents' rifles and fired them with shaking hands, who screamed when they pulled the trigger, who vomited afterward, who kept firing anyway, because the alternative was watching their families die. Zrex's primary arms extended, the ceremonial covers falling away to reveal the gleaming blades beneath. You were one of them, the War Master said. Kalen shook his head. No, I was one of the ones who came after. The reinforcements. The ones who found the bodies. He stopped walking. He was close enough now to touch the War Master's carapace. 347 beings, Zrex. That's your count. Do you know what the human count was? On Kaler's world. The War Master said nothing. 8,412, Kalen said. In one day, in one afternoon, your War Masters killed 8,412 humans. Most of them civilians. Most of them unarmed. Most of them begging. He reached out and touched the War Master's chest. Right over the heart equivalent. The chitin was cold. And here's the thing I want you to understand, Zrex. Here's the thing the coalition doesn't want you to know. His voice was barely a whisper now, audible only to the War Master and the first few rows of the stands. We remember. Every single one. We remember the names. We remember the faces. We remember the way the light left their eyes. And we remember the sound their bodies made when they hit the ground. He stepped back. We remember, he said, and we wait. We wait for the moment when the beings who did this to us stand in front of us, in a place where there are no rules, no oversight, no coalition observers with their rating algorithms and their betting syndicates. We wait for the moment when it's just us, in them, and the memory. He spread his arms wide. This is that moment, Zrex. This is the moment I've been waiting for since I was 19 years old, and I stepped over my sister's body to pick up her rifle and keep fighting. The War Master's blades came up. The crowd screamed. And Kalen Thorne, the human who refused to perform, began to fight. It was not a fair fight. This was not because Zrex was stronger, faster, or more skilled, although he was all three. It was not because the War Master's blades could cut through steel, or because his chitin was impervious to most conventional weapons, or because his neural architecture had been optimized for combat in ways that human biology could never match. It was not a fair fight because Kalen Thorne had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. And Zrex had been waiting for nothing. The War Master struck first, a horizontal slash designed to open the human's torso from hip to opposite shoulder. Kalen dropped beneath it, rolling forward, coming up inside Zrex's guard. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't need one. His hands found the joints in the War Master's secondary arms, the delicate manipulators that Zrex used for precision work, and he twisted. The sound of chitin cracking echoed through the silent arena. Zrex screamed, a sound that no Vrika had made in public for over a century. The War Master staggered backward, his secondary arms hanging at unnatural angles, the nerves exposed to the air. Kalen didn't pursue. He stood where he was, breathing evenly, and watched the War Master struggle to regain his balance. You could have blocked that, Kalen said. You knew I was going for your secondary arms. You could have rotated your carapace, shifted your weight, turned the joint away from my grip. But you didn't, because you've been fighting soldiers for 30 years. Soldiers with weapons. Soldiers who follow rules. Soldiers who don't grab. Zrex's mandibles clattered. You fight like an animal. No, Kalen shook his head. Animals fight to survive. I fight to remember. There's a difference. He moved again. This time, Zrex was ready. The War Master's primary blades carved the air in a complex pattern, a technique designed to eliminate all possible escape vectors. Kalen didn't try to escape. He stepped into the pattern, letting one of the blades slice across his forearm, using the pain to focus his movements, and brought his knee up into Zrex's abdomen. The chitin there was thinner, more flexible, designed to allow the War Master to bend and twist, not designed to withstand the full force of a human knee driven by 30 years of accumulated rage. Zrex doubled over. Kalen grabbed the War Master's head, the cluster of eyes, the mandibles, the sensory organs that made the Vrika such effective predators, and he pulled downward, toward the ground. Zrex's face struck the packed earth with a sound that made the front rows of the audience flinch. Kalen pinned him there, one hand on the back of the War Master's neck, the other pressing his primary arms into the dirt. You want to know why I'm not afraid of you? Kalen whispered. It's because I've already died. On Kaler's world. In the dirt. Next to my sister. I died there, Zrex. I died there 8,412 times. Once for every human your people murdered. He leaned closer. The person you're fighting right now isn't a person. It's a ghost. And ghosts don't feel fear. Ghosts don't feel pain. Ghosts don't feel anything except the need to finish. Zrex struggled. His primary arms strained against Kalen's grip. His legs kicked at the dirt. But the human's weight was distributed perfectly, leverage, not strength, and the War Master could not move. The Coalition is going to demand that you kill me, Kalen said, or that I kill you. That's the script. That's the performance. One winner. One loser. One body for the cleanup crews. He released Zrex's head and stepped back. So here's my counteroffer. The War Master scrambled to his feet, primary arms raised, eyes wild. You're going to walk out of this arena, Kalen said. You're going to tell the Coalition that you couldn't defeat me. That I'm too fast, too unpredictable, too human. And then you're going to go back to whatever estate you retired to, and you're going to spend the rest of your long life thinking about Kaler's world. About the 8,412 humans who died there. About the ones who survived. He held up his bleeding forearm. About the ones who are still coming. Zrex stared at him. Why? The War Master asked. Why would you let me live? Kalen smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had learned, through long and painful experience, that death was too easy. Because, he said, if I kill you, you stop suffering. And I don't want you to stop suffering. I want you to live with what you did. Every day. For the rest of your existence. I wanted to eat at you. I wanted to hollow you out. I want you to lie awake at night, in the dark, and hear the screams of the people you murdered. He turned his back on the War Master. I want you to remember. He walked toward the gate. Behind him, Zrex's primary arms lowered. The War Master's mandibles clicked once, twice, 3 times. And then, for the first time in his long and terrible career, War Master Zrex of the Vrika sat down on the packed earth of the arena floor and began to weep. The crowd did not cheer. The crowd did not boo. The crowd sat in stunned silence. 60,000 beings who had come to see a death and had instead witnessed something they did not have words for. And in the observation room, lead analyst Crix turned to her colleagues and said quietly, we need to revise our threat assessment. The Coalition Council convened an emergency session 17 minutes after the match ended. The topic: one human, designation Kalen Thorne, currently residing in a holding chamber that had been upgraded to diplomatic suite after the second match's conclusion. Council member Thrash, the same official Kalen had depicted as a startled hamster, opened the proceedings with characteristic bluntness. Kill him. The other council members shifted in their seats. There were 12 of them, representing the coalition's most powerful species: the Vrika, the Xylosians, the Kelzar, the Grishnak, and 8 others whose names were less important than their votes. "We can't just kill him," said Council Member Velix of the Xylosians. "The trials have rules, legal frameworks, due process. The trials have ratings," Thrash countered. "And the ratings for this human's matches have increased by 600%. Do you understand what that means? 600%. In 2 matches. Without a single death. The lack of death is precisely the problem," said Councilmember Yix of the Grishnak. "Our audience comes to see violence. To see blood. To see the raw, primal conflict that's not what the audience came to see tonight." The voice belonged to Councilmember Saris of the Kelzar, the oldest being on the council, and the only one who had been present for the founding of the trials 600 cycles ago. "I was in the stands. I watched the audience. They weren't looking for violence. They were looking at the human, at his face, at his eyes, at the way he moved and spoke and was." She leaned forward, her scaled face catching the light. They were seeing something they had never seen before, something they didn't have words for, something that made them feel uncomfortable. "Uncomfortable is bad for business," Thrash said. "Uncomfortable is addictive." Saris' tongue flickered. "The audience will come back. They will bring friends. They will tell stories. And the human will continue to refuse to die, and continue to refuse to kill, and every match will become more uncomfortable than the last. That's not sustainable," Velix argued. "Eventually, he'll face an opponent who doesn't care about his psychological games. Someone who will simply destroy him. Perhaps," Sari steepled her claws, "or perhaps he'll find a way to destroy them. Without killing them. Without violence. Without any of the tools we've spent 600 cycles perfecting." The council chamber fell silent. "You're suggesting," Thrash said slowly, "that this human represents a threat not just to the trials, but to the coalition itself." "I'm suggesting," Saris replied, "that we don't know what he represents. And that scares me more than any weapon, any army, any war master ever has." Kalen was drawing when the door opened. He had requested paper and writing implements 3 hours ago, and the diplomatic suite staff had provided them with a speed that suggested the coalition was now taking his requests very seriously. He was drawing a scene from memory. A hillside, a tree, 2 small figures sitting beneath it, their faces indistinct, their postures relaxed. "Your daughter?" Kalen looked up. Overseer Vex stood in the doorway, mandibles working in that particular rhythm that indicated nervousness. "No," Kalen said. "My sister. Before Kaler's world. Before any of it." Vex entered the room and sat down across from him. The overseer's posture was different now. Less formal, less adversarial. He looked, Kalen thought, like a being who had been forced to confront something he had spent a long time ignoring. "The council is debating your fate," Vex said. "I know. They're afraid of you. I know. They should be." Vex's eye stalks retracted. "Not because of what you can do. Because of what you won't do. Because of the example you're setting." Kalen set down his drawing implement. The example being that a human can enter your arena, face your monsters, and walk out alive without becoming a monster himself. "That's not." Vex stopped. "Tried again. The trials are built on a certain understanding. A social contract. The beings who enter the arena know that only one will leave. They accept this. They prepare for it. They make peace with it." "Do they?" "What? Make peace with it?" Kalen's eyes were steady. "Do they really? Or do they just pretend to, because the alternative is admitting that they're participating in something fundamentally wrong?" Vex's mandibles went still. "You don't have to answer that," Kalen said. I know the answer. I've seen it. In the eyes of every contestant I've faced. In the way they move, the way they fight, the way they hesitate when they think no one's watching. They don't want to be here, Vex. None of them do. They're here because the coalition gave them no other choice. Because the alternative was death, or poverty, or watching their family starve while the credits rolled in. He picked up his drawing again. That's not a social contract. That's extortion. And the only reason it's worked for 600 cycles is because no one ever stood up and said no. Vex was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? The overseer asked finally. Kalen shrugged. That depends on the coalition. They can keep sending opponents. I'll keep not killing them. Eventually, they'll run out of beings willing to fight me. Or they'll kill me themselves, which will prove my point better than anything I could say. And if they let you go, then I go. I go back to whatever's left of my life. I find a quiet corner of the galaxy. I draw pictures. I remember my sister. I wait for the next crisis, the next war, the next opportunity to remind the universe that humans don't forget. He looked up. Is that what you came here to ask me? What happens next? Vex shook his head. No, I came here to tell you that the council has made a decision. Your third match will proceed as scheduled. Kalen's eyebrows rose. Against whom? Against no one. I don't understand. Vex stood up. The council has decided that you will face the arena itself. The environmental systems will be activated at maximum intensity. No opponent. No enemy to befriend or outsmart or spare. Just you. And the elements. And 60,000 beings watching to see if you survive. He walked to the door. The match begins in 1 hour, human. I suggest you prepare. The arena had been transformed. The flat earth was gone. In its place was a landscape of extremes. A frozen wasteland on one side, a volcanic inferno on the other, and a narrow strip of temperate ground between them where the two climate systems collided in a chaos of wind and rain and electrical discharge. Kalen stood at the center of the temperate strip, barefoot, shirtless now. He had removed his upper garment and tied it around his waist. The rain plastered his hair to his skull. The wind whipped around him. The temperature fluctuated wildly as the two climate systems pushed against each other. He looked small. He looked fragile. He looked, for the first time since entering the arena, like a being who might actually die. The crowd watched in silence. The environmental systems intensified. The frozen side dropped to temperatures that would freeze exposed flesh within minutes. The volcanic side rose to temperatures that would boil blood. The temperate strip narrowed, the two extremes pushing inward, compressing the human into a smaller and smaller space. Kalen began to move. Not running, not fighting, just moving. Walking in a slow circle, his eyes scanning the terrain, his bare feet finding the places where the ground was stable. He wasn't trying to escape the environmental systems. There was no escape. He was just existing, enduring, refusing to fall. An hour passed. 2 hours. The crowd did not leave. They sat in the rain. Environmental shields had been deactivated for this match, per the council's decree, and watched the human refuse to die. His skin blistered in the heat. His lips cracked in the cold. His feet bled on the sharp rocks. He kept moving, kept walking, kept existing. At the 3-hour mark, the environmental systems reached their maximum intensity. The temperate strip was now barely 10 feet wide, a thin ribbon of survivable ground between two zones of absolute lethality. Kalen walked that ribbon like a tightrope walker, his body swaying with the wind, his eyes fixed on some point in the middle distance. At the 4-hour mark, something changed. The crowd felt it before they saw it. A shift in the atmosphere, a change in the energy of the arena. The environmental systems began to hesitate. The frozen side's temperature stopped dropping. The volcanic side's heat stopped rising. The wind died down. And then, one by one, the systems shut off. The arena returned to its default state. Flat earth, mild temperature, gentle breeze. Kalen stood in the center, alone, and looked up at the coalition box. The systems have a safety cutoff, he said. His voice was hoarse, barely audible, but the arena's acoustics carried it to every seat. 4 hours at maximum intensity. Then, they have to reset, cool down, recharge. He smiled. I read the manual. In the coalition box, Councilmember Thrash's face went pale. In the observation room, lead analyst Crix buried her head in her hands. And, in the arena, Kalen Thorne raised his voice to address the 60,000 beings who had watched him refuse to die. You want to know why humans are dangerous? He called out. It's not our weapons. It's not our technology. It's not our military tactics or our strategic genius or our ability to befriend your ravagers. He spread his arms. It's this. It's the fact that we will stand in the rain, in the cold, in the heat, in the face of absolute certainty that we're going to die, and we will keep standing. We will keep moving. We will keep being. Not because we're brave. Not because we're strong. Because we're stubborn. Because we've been told no so many times that no doesn't mean anything anymore. Because we've lost so much that we have nothing left to lose except the act of continuing. He lowered his arms. And here's the thing the coalition doesn't understand. Here's the thing your analysts can't predict. Every time you put a human in a situation designed to break them, you learn something new about what it takes to break a human. And every time you learn something new, you realize that the bar is higher than you thought. That the threshold is further away. That the point where we finally stop, where we finally give up, give in, give out doesn't exist. He turned in a slow circle, making eye contact with as many beings as possible. You can't break us. You can kill us. You can destroy our bodies. You can erase our colonies. You can write us out of your histories and pretend we never existed. But you can't break us. Because we've already been broken. We've already lost everything. We've already stood in the ruins of our lives and looked up at the sky and said, "Is that all you've got?" He stopped turning. And the answer, he said quietly, is always yes. That's all you've got. That's all anyone's ever got. And we're still here. The arena went utterly still. Kalen walked to the nearest gate, pushed it open, and left. No one stopped him. The coalition never held another trial. Not because the council voted to end them, they didn't. Not because the audience lost interest, they didn't. Not because the legal frameworks collapsed or the betting syndicates went bankrupt or the arena fell into disrepair. The trials ended because 3 cycles after Kalen Thorne walked out of the arena, a Xylosian Ravager was found curled up outside the gates of a small human colony on the edge of the Sorrow sector. It was purring. Attached to its collar, someone had put a collar on it, a simple leather band with a small metal tag, was a note. The note read, "Return it intact or chewed up. Your choice." The Ravager had not been returned intact. It had been returned loved. It had been fed, walked, brushed, taught to fetch. It had developed a preference for sleeping at the foot of a specific bed, in a specific room, in a specific house, where a specific human sat by the window and drew pictures of a hillside and a tree and 2 small figures sitting beneath it. The coalition sent a delegation to investigate. The delegation found a colony of 8,000 humans living in peaceful coexistence with the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. The Ravagers, there were 17 of them now, served as guard animals, companions, and, inexplicably, amateur therapists. The humans had learned to read their moods, anticipate their needs, and communicate with them through a combination of vocalizations and hand gestures that no xenolinguists have been able to decode. The delegation's lead investigator, Vrika, named Vex, who had requested this assignment personally, asked to speak with the colony's leader. The leader was a woman, human, 73 years old. Her hair was white. Her hands were gnarled with arthritis. Her eyes were the color of cheap whiskey in bad light. "You're his sister," Vex said. The woman smiled. "I'm the one who survived." "Yes." Kalen said, "You died. On Kaler's world." "I did. For about 4 minutes. The medics brought me back." She shrugged. "Turns out, human bodies are harder to kill than anyone thought." Vex's mandibles worked silently. "Where is he?" "Your brother." The woman looked out the window. In the distance, a Ravager was playing fetch with a group of human children, its tentacles wagging like a dog's tail. "He's where he's always been," she said. "Everywhere. Nowhere. In the space between what happened and what comes next." She turned back to Vex. He sent the Ravager as a message. Not to the Coalition. To you. Specifically to you. What message? The woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. On it, drawn in charcoal, was a cartoon of a Vrico war master riding a unicycle while juggling small, terrified creatures. Underneath, in handwriting that Vex recognized from a diplomatic suite 3 cycles ago, were 7 words. Return it intact, or chewed up. Your choice. Vex looked at the drawing, looked at the woman, looked at the Ravagers playing in the field. And for the first time in over 200 cycles, Overseer Vex of the Vrica laughed. It was not a pleasant laugh. It was the laugh of a being who had just realized that the universe was far stranger, far more complicated, and far more human than he had ever imagined. What, he asked, does he want? The woman's smile widened. He wants you to remember, she said. That's all. Just remember. She handed him the drawing. Vex looked at it for a long moment. Then, he folded it carefully, tucked it into his chest pouch, and walked back to the delegation's ship. Behind him, the Ravagers howled. Not in hunger, not in anger, in song. And somewhere in a quiet room on a quiet world, a human sat by a window and drew a picture of a hillside and a tree and 2 small figures sitting beneath it, and he smiled. The arena had gone utterly still, but the rest of the galaxy had just woken up.